relate the CFT operator, relate the bulk operator here to bulk operators here. And then once you have the bulk operators here, you can relate these individually to CFT operators here, etc. And then you have CFT, some kind of smeared local CFT operator on the boundary related to a bulk operator here. The problem with this, and this is sort of an old problem, which people discussed all the way back in the context of black hole complementarity, is that if your bulk point is sufficiently far behind the horizon, doing this evolution, this step, this backward evolution out of the horizon, because of relative boosts, if you were careful about coordinates, basically makes use of super Planckian modes as far as the bulk is concerned. It involves solving classical equations of motion beyond the regime of validity of the classical equations of motion. Okay, so this step is not allowed. Instead, you'd have to have this sort of explicit construction can't really be done in a trusted way. Okay. So there are other arguments for why you can and cannot more directly get modes here. So I'll just give an argument due to Polchinski, which says that in principle, the CFT cannot have operators behind this horizon. Okay. It's sort of a neat argument, and then there are other people who say that there are loopholes, etc. But I'll finish with this because I like it. So let's say you had a creation and annihilation operators for some mode behind the horizon. Okay, and let's take an ADS Schwarzschild black hole, so we have like a Schwarzschild killing vector and whatnot. So the sort of the Hamiltonian evolution outside of the black hole is given by the generator of this killing vector, the time translation vector. But inside the black hole, this killing vector becomes spacelike. Okay, so that means the modes on the inside of the black hole horizon, what we normally think of as energy, these modes on the inside of the horizon, think of them as moment. Think of that same quantity as momentum. Okay, and momentum doesn't have a definite sign. So these modes behind the horizon can have negative energy. Meaning, if I act with this creation operator, it lowers the energy of the state by omega instead of raising it. It lowers it. Okay, and this is the energy in the sense of the CFT. It lowers the CFT. So the argument goes as follows. Consider all the states I with energy between some very large m and m plus dn, right? So some interval with energy around m, right? How many of these states are there? The number, we expect it to be the Bekenstein-Hawking entropy associated with this mass m. How many states? Because typically, the typical state looks like a black hole. And then you act with this creation operator. Well, these states have energies that are a little bit lower. Right? How many of these are there? Well, Bekenstein-Hawking entropy of m minus omega. But if we just, use the thermodynamic definition of the temperature, it means these things, the number is down by a factor. So let's put the equality here. The number is down by a factor e to the minus beta omega, okay, which could be some kind of order 1 fraction. So that means there are actually far fewer of these states than there are of these states, just by counting. However, if you just use the creation annihilation operator algebra, okay, you take a look at this operator, sort of formally construct this operator. Yeah. If you act this operator on the left of B dagger, right, this just equals the identity operator. Because this becomes B dagger, then bring this over here, and it's B dagger, move this to the other side, minus B dagger B equals 1. just comes from the algebra of these operators. So if I act with this operator, this left inverse operator, here, it should annihilate this, or basically turn this into 1. But then we have a conflict, because then we have, you know, we have this, you know, in order for there to be far fewer of these states than there are of these states, it means that this B dagger must have annihilated some of these. But it has, that conflicts with the fact that it has this inverse. Okay. So that's sort of interesting. I mean, the counter arguments to this are that
just to get the story straight, you're saying that B dagger, the thing is that the B dagger cannot have a left inverse. That is what the argument you're making here. That is the punchline.
Yeah, the counting argument is supposed to say B dagger can't have a left inverse, but then effective field theory, we normally think of B dagger as having a left inverse. Okay, so that's the conflict, and the conclusion that I think Polchinski had in mind is that there's no B dagger in the CFT. Okay, meaning that there's no creation operator for modes behind the horizon. The counter argument is, you know, which I think is given in the latest, among other places, probably the latest paper by Papadodimus and Raju. You know, when they have a much fancier than this proposed explicit construction of field operators behind the horizon. And then, you know, you ask, well, how do they get around this argument? And the answer is that the commutation relation for the B and B dagger they construct is not exact in this sense. It has corrections to it, which sort of account for this. And you have to be much more careful. Yeah, so I'll stop there. Unfortunately, I mean, I know that as time went on, the story got sort of sketchier and sketchier. And the problem is that the subject sort of diverges and becomes much less understandable as you study. So, but that's all.
All right, so let's thanks. So any quick questions?
Actually, I'm curious about your personal opinion. What's the solution to the Bible, in your opinion? Do you subscribe to ER equals EPR?
So I'm fond of ER equals EPR. Oh, I'm fond of ER equals EPR. So I like it. I like it as a tool to analyze the questions, right? But I don't know whether I don't know whether it's going to say in the end that there are or are not firewalls, right? So I like ER equals EPR just as a tool independently of firewalls. And even though I don't really understand the paper, at least not yet, I like the sounds of these sort of new proposals from Papadodimus and Raju. They sort of sound, there are some nice aspects to them, even though I don't fully understand them. So that's where I would go next, is to try and understand what they're doing. It seems to have nice connections to other kind of field theory questions aside from firewall.
Any other questions? I think there's many discussion that will come, so let's just go over during breaks and stuff. So let's thank Stefan again.